Teboho was only 14, yet he carried the weight of a grown man's responsibilities. Every morning, while other children hurried to school with their books and laughter, he picked up his small wooden box of shoe polish and brushes, then added a tray of roasted groundnuts and biscuits to sell on the roadside. The streets of Lusaka were noisy and harsh, filled with the sound of rushing cars and impatient people. Still, Teboho worked with a quiet determination, his eyes always bright with hope. He dreamed of something bigger, though his pockets were always empty. His widowed mother struggled to provide, and his little sister often went to bed hungry. But Teboho refused to let despair crush him. He polished dusty shoes under the blazing sun, sometimes earning just a few kwacha, sometimes nothing at all. With sweat dripping down his face, he would smile at strangers, trying to turn their frowns into kindness. The coins he collected were carefully wrapped in a handkerchief, carried like treasure to help his family survive another day. Despite the hardship, he often told himself, "Tomorrow will be better." One hot afternoon, when the air felt heavy and the ground scorched bare feet, Teboho paused to wipe the sweat from his forehead. That was when his eyes caught sight of an elderly man standing alone by the roadside. His clothes were neat but dusty from travel, his face lined with exhaustion. He clutched a walking stick and looked around helplessly, as if the whole city had turned into a maze. People passed him without care, some even shaking their heads and laughing at his confusion. Teboho felt his heart twist. Something about the man's lost expression reminded him of his late father in his final days, weak, unnoticed, and needing compassion. He watched as the old man tried to ask for help, but the crowd hurried past, unwilling to waste a moment. For a second, Teboho hesitated. He had shoes to polish, snacks to sell, money to earn, but his conscience whispered louder than hunger. He stepped forward slowly, his small shadow stretching toward the old man. The cliffhanger. Teboho, the poor boy who had almost nothing, was about to meet the man who would change his life forever. The old man's steps were shaky, his eyes darting around as if searching for a familiar face in a sea of strangers. A group of young men nearby laughed cruelly, mocking him for being too old to walk alone. Others shook their heads and muttered impatiently, unwilling to stop for even a moment. Teboho's chest tightened at the sight. He knew what it felt like to be invisible, to need help and find none. Without thinking twice, he set down his shoe polish box and the tray of snacks, dusted his hands on his worn shorts, and walked straight to the man. "Sir, are you okay?" Teboho asked softly, his voice carrying more concern than his years. The old man looked up, surprised that someone so young had stopped. His lips were dry, his forehead damp with sweat. Teboho quickly reached into his bag and pulled out a small plastic bottle of water, the very one he had saved for himself to drink later under the scorching sun. Without hesitation, he twisted off the cap and offered it. "Please, drink this," he said, smiling gently. The man accepted with trembling hands, sipping slowly as relief washed over his face. He looked at Teboho with gratitude but said little. Most boys his age would have guarded that water, but Teboho didn't think twice. "Where are you going, sir? I can help you," he added, noticing how lost the man appeared. You would guide me?" the man asked, almost in disbelief. "Of course." Teboho nodded firmly. "I can show you the way." He picked up his tray again, balancing it carefully, and gestured for the old man to follow. Passers-by who had mocked earlier now stared in silence, some with shame, some with curiosity. The boy who barely had enough to eat was giving away his most precious thing, kindness. The old man's eyes softened as they began to walk side by side. He said nothing, but in his heart he was deeply moved. Teboho had no idea that this small act of kindness, offered so naturally, would soon open a door to a destiny he never imagined. The road stretched long and dusty as Teboho walked beside the old man, carefully guiding him through the noisy streets of Lusaka. The man leaned slightly on his stick, his eyes scanning the boy with quiet curiosity. After a few moments of silence, he asked gently, "What is your name, son?" "Teboho," the boy replied, adjusting the tray of snacks on his head. "It means gratitude. My mother gave me that name." The man smiled faintly at the meaning, then continued. "Tell me, Teboho, do you go to school?" Teboho lowered his eyes, his voice steady but honest. "I used to, sir. But after my father died, I had to stop. Now I shine shoes and sell snacks so my little sister can continue her classes. One day I hope to return. The man studied him closely, surprised at the maturity in his words. And when you return, what do you want to become? Teboho's eyes lit up, his face glowing with a spark of hope. An engineer, sir. I want to build roads, bridges, and houses so people won't suffer like we do in our leaking shack. I want my mother to rest and my sister to grow without worries. The man nodded slowly, clearly moved. That is a big dream, my boy. But tell me, what makes you keep going, even when life is so hard? Teboho smiled softly, his step steady. Because kindness costs nothing, sir. My father used to say, a good heart is more valuable than gold. I believe him. Even if I have little, I can still share a smile, some water, or my time. That is something no poverty can take from me. The old man was silent for a while, his heart heavy with emotions he couldn't show. Every word from Teboho was like a mirror of values he thought the world had forgotten. He had met many wealthy men, but few spoke with such truth and innocence. As they walked on, he knew this encounter was no accident. It was a test of fate. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the crowded rooftops of Lusaka, Teboho returned home with tired steps. His small earnings for the day jingled faintly inside a cloth pouch, barely enough to cover food and a bit of charcoal. He walked into their shack, its tin roof patched with old sheets of plastic, and the smell of damp earth filled the air. Rain from the last storm had left dark stains on the walls, and a slow drip from the ceiling tapped into a rusty pot placed in the corner. Inside, his mother, Nomvula, crouched over a small charcoal stove, fanning weak flames. Her face glistened with sweat, her clothes worn thin from years of use. In the pot simmered a thin porridge, stretched with water so it could fill 3 stomachs instead of one. She turned with a tired smile when she saw him. Welcome home, Teboho, she said softly, her voice filled with love, but also exhaustion. His little sister, Lindiwe, sat nearby with wide eyes, clutching an old doll made of rags. Did you bring biscuits today, brother? She asked hopefully. Teboho nodded, pulling 2 small pieces from his tray. She clapped with joy, not knowing he had gone without lunch to save those for her. He sat down, handing over his pouch of coins to his mother. She counted them silently, her fingers trembling. It will be enough for now, she whispered, though both knew it was hardly enough at all. As they ate their plain meal, laughter still filled the shack. Teboho cracked small jokes to make his sister smile, hiding the ache in his stomach and the heaviness in his heart. He thought about the old man he had helped earlier and how he had avoided talking about home. He had spoken of dreams, not of leaky roofs or empty plates. That night, lying on a thin mat as rain tapped harder on the roof, Teboho whispered a silent prayer. He did not ask for riches, only for strength to keep going, and for a tomorrow where his family would suffer a little less. The next morning, the old man, Mr. Edeyemi, sat quietly in a small roadside cafe, sipping tea and watching the busy market around him. His mind kept returning to the boy from yesterday, the boy who had given him water and guided him with such respect. Something about Teboho's words and eyes had stayed with him through the night. He wanted to know more, to see if the kindness he witnessed was only a moment or a way of life. After finishing his tea, he rose slowly and began asking questions. He approached a shoe vendor first. Do you know a boy named Teboho? About 14. Carries a tray of snacks. The vendor's face lit up. Ah, yes, we all know him. He's a good boy, always polite. Sometimes when my stall is slow, he shares his food with me, even though I know he barely eats himself. Adeyemi moved on, speaking to a fruit seller. She shook her head in admiration. That child is rare. One time, a blind man was struggling to cross the street. Everyone ignored him, but Teboho left his tray, ran across, and helped him all the way. He didn't even care that he lost customers that day. At a small kiosk, another man added his story. If you drop a coin near him, don't worry. He will run after you to return it. Honest to the bone. Even when kids tease him for being poor, he smiles and keeps working. The old man listened carefully, each word confirming what he had felt in his heart. He watched from a distance as Teboho polished a man's shoes, wiping them with care, his young hands steady and precise. When the customer paid, Teboho bowed his head respectfully, then gave a portion of ground nuts to a hungry child passing by. Mr. Adeyemi's chest tightened. This was no ordinary boy. In a world full of greed and selfishness, here was a child who lived by values money could not buy. The old man knew then that fate had led him to Teboho for a reason. The sun blazed harshly the next afternoon as Teboho crouched on the roadside, polishing a pair of worn shoes. His shirt clung to his back with sweat, but he kept working carefully, determined to earn enough to buy supper for his family. Just a few feet away, Mr. Adeyemi walked slowly, leaning on his stick, his eyes sharp with quiet purpose. Today he had decided to test the boy's heart, to know if the kindness he had seen was real or just chance. As he passed near Teboho, Adeyemi let a thick leather wallet slip from his pocket. It landed on the dusty ground with a soft thud, unnoticed by anyone except the boy. For a moment, Teboho froze. The wallet was heavy, bulging with notes. More money than he had ever seen in his life. His fingers trembled as he picked it up, staring at the crisp bills inside. His mind raced. With this money, he could fix their leaking roof, buy food for weeks, even pay his sister's school fees. But then his father's words echoed in his heart. An honest path is always the right path. Teboho shut the wallet quickly, his decision made. Without hesitation, he leapt up and ran after the old man, dodging through the crowd. Sir, wait! He called out, his voice urgent. Adeyemi turned slowly, watching the boy rush toward him, panting but determined. Teboho held out the wallet with both hands. You dropped this, he said, his eyes steady. The old man took it back, studying him carefully. Did you open it? He asked. Yes, Teboho admitted, but only to see if it belonged to you. I would never keep what isn't mine. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then, a slow smile spread across Adeyemi's face. His heart swelled with pride. This boy had passed the test, not just with words, but with action. Thank you, Teboho, he said warmly. You have shown me more than honesty today. You have shown me the kind of greatness money cannot buy. The next day, the quiet village buzzed with sudden noise as the sound of engines filled the air. Children ran to the roadside, eyes wide, as a convoy of sleek black luxury cars rolled through the dusty path. Men paused from their games of drafts, women stopped stirring pots, and traders left their stalls to watch in disbelief. It was a sight no one in the area had ever seen. Doors opened, and sharply dressed men in suits stepped out, their polished shoes sinking into the dirt. The villagers whispered nervously, unsure what was happening. At the center of it all, Mr. Adeyemi emerged, no longer looking like a weary old man lost in the city. His posture was firm, his steps confident, his presence commanding. He wore a tailored suit, and the same stick he had leaned on before now seemed more like a symbol of power than weakness. Murmurs spread quickly. That's the old man Teboho helped. What is going on? Who is he really? The crowd pressed closer as Adeyemi raised his hand for silence. His deep voice carried over the gathering. People of this village, yesterday you saw me as an old lost traveler. Many of you ignored me, some even mocked me. But one boy, with nothing to his name, gave me water, guided me, and showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. Gasps filled the air. Teboho stood frozen near the front, his heart racing. Adeyemi continued. I am Adeyemi Olufemi, a businessman with wealth that stretches across nations. I've spent years searching, not for riches, but for an heir. Someone whose heart is richer than gold. And today, I have found him. He turned, pointing directly at Teboho. The crowd erupted in shock, some cheering, others whispering in envy. Teboho's mother clutched her chest, tears spilling down her cheeks. His sister clapped her small hands in joy, while his uncle Bongani, who often mocked him, stood speechless. Adeyemi's voice rang clear. This boy, Teboho, has touched my heart. He is the one worthy of my legacy. The moment Mr. Adeyemi pointed at Teboho, the village erupted like never before. Some people clapped loudly, their voices filled with pride. It's our boy! He is chosen! They shouted, dancing in excitement. Mothers hugged their children, telling them to learn from Teboho's good heart. A group of young men who once laughed at his torn clothes now looked at him with awe, whispering to each other about how quickly life could change. But not everyone was happy. In the corners of the crowd, jealous murmurs spread like fire. Why him? One man grumbled. He's just a shoe shine boy. Another woman folded her arms, her eyes sharp. What did he do that we couldn't? Just gave a sip of water? Envy painted their faces, though deep down they knew kindness was the answer. In the middle of the crowd, Teboho stood frozen, his hands trembling. His mind refused to accept what his ears had heard. A billionaire? An heir? Him? He stared at Mr. Adeyemi in disbelief, half expecting it to be some kind of dream that would vanish if he blinked too hard. His knees felt weak, and his heart pounded against his chest like a drum. His mother, Nomvula, rushed forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. She hugged her son tightly, her voice shaking. Do you see, Teboho? God has answered us. Your father would be proud. Little Lindaway squealed with joy, clapping and tugging at her brother's shirt, too young to fully understand, but happy that the brother who always sacrificed for her was finally being celebrated. At the back, Uncle Bongani, who had spent years mocking Teboho for being a useless dreamer, stood speechless. His mouth opened, then closed again, unable to form words. He had often told others that kindness would never fill a stomach. Now, in front of everyone, his pride melted into silence. The cheers, the envy, the disbelief, all of it swirled around Teboho like a storm. But inside, he felt only wonder. His small act of kindness had opened a door to a world he never imagined. The crowd grew silent again as Mr. Adeyemi raised his hand. His voice was calm but powerful, reaching every ear. Today is not about wealth or power, he said firmly. It is about values, honesty, humility, and kindness. This boy, with nothing to his name, showed me more riches than men with millions. His eyes shifted to Teboho, who still stood wide-eyed, struggling to believe this was real. Then came the words that shook the entire village. From this day, Teboho will never lack again. I will provide full scholarships for his education, from secondary school to university. His dreams of becoming an engineer will be nurtured, not buried under poverty. Gasps and cheers burst through the crowd. Mothers wiped tears, children stared in awe, and elders nodded in respect. Adeyemi continued, his family will move into a new house, safe, clean, and filled with dignity. No more leaking roofs, no more empty nights. They will live as they deserve, with respect and comfort. Nomvula, overwhelmed, covered her face with trembling hands, her sobs echoing softly. Little Lindaway jumped up and down, shouting her brother's name in joy. Even the jealous villagers could not deny the beauty of the moment. But Adeyemi wasn't finished. He turned to Teboho directly. You will walk with me, my son. I will mentor you, teach you what wealth and power truly mean. Not to dominate, but to serve. For I have built an empire, but what I need is someone with a pure heart to carry it forward. And I have found that in you. The boy's lips trembled as tears streamed down his cheeks. He tried to speak, but could only whisper, Thank you, sir. Thank you. Adeyemi looked back at the crowd, his voice strong. Remember this lesson. Kindness, not wealth, is the measure of true greatness. For money can buy houses and cars, but it cannot buy a good heart. That is priceless. The words hung in the air, sinking into every heart present. In that moment, Teboho's life, and his family's, changed forever. Months later, the dusty roadside where Teboho once polished shoes now seemed like a memory from another lifetime. Each morning, he walked proudly in a crisp school uniform, his books neatly tucked under his arm. The same boy who had once chased after coins and balanced trays of snacks now sat in a classroom, answering questions with confidence. Teachers praised his sharp mind and discipline, and classmates admired his kindness. He studied with a hunger not just for knowledge, but for the future he had once only dared to dream about. At home, life had transformed completely. The leaking shack was gone, replaced by a modest but beautiful house with solid walls and a roof that did not tremble in the rain. His mother, Nomvula, no longer bent her back over charcoal stoves in despair. She walked with dignity, smiling more often than before. Lindiwe, too, attended school every day, carrying her little bag proudly, her laughter filling the new home. They ate meals together at a proper table, no longer worried about whether there would be food tomorrow. Yet, even with these blessings, Taboho never forgot where he had come from. On his way home from school, he often stopped to help younger children struggling with books or to share his lunch with those who had none. Neighbors watched with amazement, whispering, even with his new life, he is still the same Taboho. He carried his values like a crown, humble yet shining, proving that wealth had not changed his heart. One afternoon, while helping a small boy tie his broken shoe, Taboho looked up at the sky and smiled. He thought of the day when he had offered water to a lost old man, unaware that it would open the door to his destiny. His life was proof that even the smallest act of kindness could change everything. Because sometimes, the road you walk to help a stranger is the same road that leads you to your destiny.